Hi everyone, this is Samantha from the Dancing Soap Dish. I hope you're well. Check out these soaps of some famous landmarks that I have done. This is April's installment of the 2024 Stamped Soap Challenge. See here we have the Opera House, which is in Australia where I live. We also have the Eiffel Tower and a number of other famous landmarks. Cute little travel soaps, I'm calling them, because they're a little bit smaller than a normal soap bar and perfect as a bon voyage gift for someone who's going away. Also, you could put these three soaps together and they'd make a wonderful set for anybody who's visiting Las Vegas. So you've got the Statue of Liberty from New York, New York, and the Pyramid and the Sphinx from the Luxor. And of course, there's that wonderful Eiffel Tower restaurant in Las Vegas as well. So I think that's pretty cool. As previously mentioned, this is one of the projects from my 2024 Stamped Soap Challenge. You can find the other projects in a special playlist on this YouTube channel. Alright, so here are the cookie molds that I used to make these soaps. As you can see, we have Statue of Liberty, the Colosseum, a Sphinx and a Pyramid. This is the Taj Mahal. This is Big Ben, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Eiffel Tower, and the Sydney Opera House. Now, I saw these cookie molds and I fell in love with them. They are so incredibly detailed. Look at the detail on that. And I was a little bit concerned that it would be hard to get that detail onto a bar of soap. But I think they came out quite well. What I'm also going to share with you today is just a basic rule of thumb that I use for calculating how much soap I need to fill up cookie molds. Here is an example of some baby shower soaps that I've done in the past. And they're all different shapes and they're all different sizes. So sometimes you're thinking, how am I going to figure out how much soap I need to fill all of these up? And I'll tell you what I do is I get myself a set of scales and I actually weigh the cookie molds. So I weigh both the cookie cutter and the cookie stamp. I'm just going to pile these 8 cookie molds here on top of this scale, and I'm going to find out how much they all weigh together, and then I do a very simple calculation where I times that number by 5, and that gives me an approximate weight that I can use to fill up these molds. So if we have a look here, I don't know if you can read it, but this scale is in grams, and it says that all of these cookie molds together weigh 71 grams. So this calculation works whether you're using grams or ounces. So I can just change my scale here. If I press this button, it will change it to ounces, which it says here they weigh 2.4 ounce. And like I said, very simple calculation to find out how much soap base you'll need to fill them. So weigh all the cookie cutters and the stamps and then multiply that number by 5. So for example, I had 71 grams times 5 is 355 grams of soap base. If you're using ounces, I times that by 5 and got 12 ounces of soap base. Now these numbers are approximate. I find that it's probably actually a tiny bit more than you do need. So what I don't do is I don't add any extra for wastage. That number has the wastage included in it. And I find it works quite well. So the next step is to seal up these cookie cutters so I can use them as soap molds. I have this very large roll of resin tape, or PET tape as it's also called. It's basically an adhesive tape that's coated with a film of silicone. So it's heat resistant and it's non-stick, which is perfect when you're working with melt and pour soap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place all my cookie cutters with the flat side down. See how one of the sides is a little bit flatter than the others, onto my resin tape. And this will sort of create a bottom to the cutters that I can then use to fill up, just like I would a soap mold. I'm just sort of placing these as they fit. And then I'm going to cut that off. And, oh, look, I forgot one. I forgot the Sydney Opera House. Oh, that's the most important one. That's all right. I'll just get myself another piece of tape here. There's a link in the description to where you can purchase tape like this. You can get it on Amazon and AliExpress, and also from resin suppliers as well. It's something that you use quite a bit in resin crafts. So I have my piece of resin tape. It's probably best that you don't stick too many cutters on the one piece of tape, because if one of them is on slightly crooked or not, the tape's not sitting flat, it can actually create bows in the surface of the other cutters too. So I'll probably just do 2 or 3 at the most per piece of tape. I find just from my experience and trial and error that's probably the best way to do it. And just put them down side by side where they fit well. And what is an important step is to make sure that the tape is really very well adhered to the surface of the cookie cutter. So I actually turn them over and run my finger along the surface of the cookie cutter and make sure that tape is really stuck down. And because the tape is colored, because it's got that sort of green hue, you can see where it's stuck quite well to the pink cookie cutter surface. And you can also see how that one that I pushed down is a little bit greener than the one I'm holding up. You can also see if there's any bubbles or anything there. So that's really helpful. Make sure that tape is stuck down well. So now I'm measuring out my soap base. I'm just using a clear detergent-free soap base. This is a Stephenson brand. It's not an ultra clear, it's just a normal clear because I'm going to color it anyway. I have here some titanium dioxide, which I'm going to use for coloring, and also some gold mica, which I have mixed with my fragrance. I'm doing a mix of tea tree and basil essential oils. And like I said, I've mixed that gold mica in there just to help it disperse more easily through the soap when I mix it in. And I'm just heating up my soap at this moment. Here it is here. And giving it a good stir. There are a few little bubbles in it. And it has got a slight yellow tinge, but that's fine. This is not an ultra clear base and I don't need it to be clear. I'm adding some titanium dioxide to it, just to give it an sort of slightly opaque color. What I'm aiming for is ivory. I actually want my soap to be an ivory color, and I find the best way to do that is to actually use gold mica. Gold mica makes a beautiful cream or ivory or magnolia color. So that's what I'm using here. As I'm stirring in the color, I'm also stirring in the fragrance. You need to work quickly with melt and pour soap, so that's why I like to do those two things together, because you can't take too much time measuring stuff out, because then your soap sets. I have some isopropyl alcohol on hand, which I'm going to use. Just setting up my soap here, my little cookie cutter soap molds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour just a tiny bit in the bottom and give that a spray with the alcohol. And the reason for this is I'll be able to tell if there's any holes. If the soap starts seeping out, obviously I want to fix that sooner rather than later before I lose like a whole mold full of soap. And I'm also spraying it with the isopropyl alcohol just to get rid of any bubbles. Some sort of surface bubbles do tend to stick to the edge of the plastic cookie cutters, and then when you take the tape off the other side, you might have some bubbles there. So that's why I just pour a very thin layer. Make sure there's no bubbles in it. Make sure there's no leaks between the tape and my cookie cutter, and then I can continue, and that's what I'm doing now. Now, so I'm using these cookie cutters as soap molds, but they're not like silicone soap molds. The plastic that is used for the cookie cutters is very rigid. It doesn't have any give in it like a silicone mold does. And this particular soap base that I'm using does tend to shrink as it sets. And what this does is it sort of pulls on the side of the cookie cutters, which don't give way because they're a stiff plastic. And I find I end up with sort of like a concave sort of hole in the surface of my soap. Just as it's pulled, as it shrinks when it's setting, it sort of pulls itself into like a concave shape. So in order to get around that, I prefer to overfill all of my molds. So you can see here, I'm really filling I fill these molds to the top, And then I went back and I'm filling them again to the point where some of them are overflowing at this stage. I don't know if you can tell, but if you have a really close look, there's like a concave, like a sort of bulbous sort of surface that's appearing above the edge of the cookie cutter as I'm really stuffing these cookie cutters with as much soap as I possibly can. Probably best not to spray any more alcohol at this point because it can break the surface tension and it will just make all that stuff that you've poured in just ooze out the side. So that's why I'm not spraying any more alcohol. And I'm just getting rid of this last bit of soap here. And as you can see, I've filled up all 8 of my molds. I have a tiny bit of soap left. So that calculation that I did was quite accurate. And I've definitely got enough soap there, but I haven't wasted too much either. And I've been able to fill up all those molds and know exactly how much soap base I needed, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so these are well and truly set. And you can see they're still sort of overflowing, which is good. That's exactly what I want. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off all this excess soap base that's sort of overflowed around the edges. And as you can see, there is sort of like a concave finish to all the soaps, and they're a little bit wrinkly as well, which also happens because the plastic doesn't give way. They're a little bit wrinkly. They're not the best finish, is what I'm trying to say. And I knew that was going to happen, so I've done this on purpose. See, this one here is actually quite concave because a lot of the soap flowed out of that instead of staying on top. I want to give them a really good finish. Even though it's the back of the soap, I still want them to look nice. You know, everybody wants their soap to look nice and have a really nice finish. So what I'm going to do is pull all of the soaps away from the tape now. You can reuse the tape, maybe 1 or 2 more times if you want to. It's not the cheapest tape in the world, so reusing it is probably not a bad idea. I just stick it to itself like I'm doing here, and then I can keep it all together and reuse it if I need. So as you can see, these are coming away very easily. The tape is coming away. It's not leaving any sticky residue or anything because it does have that silicone coating. And now it's left me a beautiful flat surface on one side. But the other side, not so much. So that is why I'm getting this large knife here, large straight edged knife, and I am slicing the wrinkly bottoms, the wrinkly bums off these soaps and giving them a beautiful flush straight finish on both sides. So I've got the flush finish from the tape, and now I'm also creating a flush finish by just cutting off with a knife that excess soap on the back. And it's just a really easy way to make a nice and neat bar of soap. Keep all your excess here, like see how I'm putting all these bits that I'm slicing off, and even all the bits that had overflowed onto the tape. I've kept all that. You can remelt that and use it again in another project, or maybe just leave it in little bits and shreds. That can also make a nice looking soap too. So don't throw it away, don't waste it. It will be good again. Even if you just wanted to remelt it down into a little round soap bar for you to use in the shower, for your family to use, that's fine, and it makes sure that nothing goes to waste. So here we are. I've nearly finished these. Some of them didn't quite have as much to slice off as the others, but that's fine. I do have to stamp these, and I find that the pressure of stamping them can also flatten the bottom of them quite nicely too. So I'm not so worried about that. There we go. Here's the final one, the Eiffel Tower. And now I have some beautiful little famous landmark shaped soaps. Now I'm just going to reorganize these and lay them out properly and rematch their stamps to each soap. Just going to match them up here to make sure they're got the right corresponding stamp to the right corresponding cookie cutter, because the next step is to start hammering these stamps into the soap. So here we are here. As you can see, I am using a hammer because this soap is really hard. I mean, even though this soap has just set, and I do recommend that you stamp your soap as soon as it sets and not leave it for too long. Melt and pour soap is just incredibly hard, harder than, a cold process soap. And you will need a hammer or a mallet, preferably with a really small head. See, this one has a small head, which is perfect for doing these small stamps. And you need to use the hammer basically all around the stamp. Make sure you get every single part of it, especially around the handle. Sometimes you can even do on top of the handle. And that will make sure that you get a very even and perfect imprint of the stamp onto the soap. So there we go. I've just done the Leaning Tower of Pisa. That came out very well. Going to move on to the next one. This one is the Pyramid and the Sphinx. Here we go. I gave that a good stamp. You can see there the pattern that's embossed in it. Looks really good. I want to know if there's anyone watching who's actually been to all these famous landmarks. If you are well traveled and have been to many or most or some or any of these famous landmarks, put a comment in and tell us how many you've actually seen. I certainly haven't seen all of these. I've seen a few of them. But yeah, I'm just interested to know if there's anyone out there who's done them all. All right, so here we are. The stamping is all finished. And what I'm going to do now is remove the soap from the cookie cutters. I'm using the stamps for this, so I'm putting the stamp back in place. And then I'm going to use my 2 thumbs to push on the stamp to push the soap out through the bottom of the cookie cutter. And the reason why I've replaced the stamp is just because I don't want thumbprints, I don't want fingerprints, I don't want to ruin the surface of my beautifully stamped soap. There you go, there's the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And so I'm leaving the stamp on the top because you can see I have to push quite firmly, and also make sure to push it out quite evenly. You don't want one side to come out more than the other because then it actually starts to misshape the soap. And then once you've done that, you can very carefully just pull away the stamp and you have this great little soap. Here's the Sydney Opera House. How cute are these? These are great travel size soaps, perfect even for, B&Bs or, again, like a Bon Voyage gift if someone's going on a round the world trip. Just give them all these beautiful little traveling soaps. They're about the same size as the ones that you get when you stay in hotel rooms, but they're so much better because they're these beautiful shapes and they have these beautiful patterns on them. So I think they're really cool. I'm loving these. And I like how the colour came out. I was going for a nice ivory colour, and I think I've definitely managed to do that. Now, these soaps are beautiful as they are. You can't really see it so much on the camera, but with the naked eye, you can make out all of the beautiful details that make up the designs of the soap. But I think I want to just add some beautiful sparkly gold mica just to really emphasize how beautifully detailed these are. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just bringing across a paper towel and a little paint palette. So this is the beautiful sparkly gold that I want to put in the little grooves of the stamped images. I'm going to use some isopropyl alcohol to make myself a mica paint. And I think it's just going to make it extra sparkly and extra special. This is the paintbrush that I'm going to use. It is a 000. That's how fine it is. Very, very fine. And what I'm going to do first is just mix myself up some mica paint. It's very easy to do. Don't need to do any measuring or anything. I'm just going to put a significant blob of mica into the cavity of this paint palette. And I'm going to add some isopropyl alcohol to it. Mix it up to make myself a paint. Now the paint, you don't want it to be too thick. It definitely needs to be a paint and not a paste. So I'm mixing this up here, and I think definitely I can see from mixing it that it is quite thick. It's definitely pasty, and I want it a lot more runnier than this. The reason why I want it runny is because I actually want it to run into the grooves in the soap that I've created with the stamp. So that's why it needs to be quite runny. And then obviously the alcohol will evaporate and it'll just leave the mica in those grooves. So even though I've got this really fine paintbrush, it can be difficult to just get the mica inside the grooves. I'm not worried about neatness at this stage. What I'm more interested in is just making sure that I use my paintbrush to push mica into all the little nooks and crannies that make up the designs on these soaps. And that might mean getting some on the outside too. That is perfectly fine. As you can see, that one I just finished there is not perfect. But I'm just very quickly, this is quite therapeutic, going to just make sure that all the paint gets into those grooves. If my paint starts to dry out, or if I run out, I can just add some more alcohol if it dries out, or I can add some more mica and some more alcohol if I run out of paint. And I'm just going to sit here and fill up all these beautiful designs. They're so pretty. I like the sparkly gold too. So here we go. I've finished them all now. I have let these dry overnight. So this mica paint is very, very dry. Do not attempt to do anything further with them until the mica paint is dry. So here they are now. They are dry. And what I'm going to do is just clean them up a little bit. I have here a clean, dry rag. So there's no moisture on this rag. It's not wet or anything. Sorry, cloth. Sorry, not a rag. It's fresh out of the packet. It's never been used before. And what I'm going to do is just buff the surface of my soaps to try and buff off any of that excess mica that is sitting on the surface of my soap. Now, because these are so detailed, the surface of the soap has been pushed in a little bit. It's not sitting completely flat. So it's probably easier if I actually just use my finger and the cloth to buff all the excess mica off the surface, because there are some sort of indentations here that won't be reached if I just run the soap over the surface like I was doing. So as you can see here, I'm just using the cloth to buff any of that excess mica off. Here we go. Look at that. So beautiful and shiny. I really love that. That looks amazing. Awesome. I'll pop that down there. And then once you've used a little bit of your cloth and that bit's got a bit of mica on it, you just move over to a clean piece of cloth and keep going. So here we go. This is the Leaning Tower of Pisa, located in Italy. There's actually two famous landmarks from Italy here in this collection. We've got the Colosseum and the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So Italy's the only country that actually has two famous landmarks that I'm doing today. The Sphinx and the Pyramid, of course, is from Egypt. The one I'm doing now is the beautiful Sydney Opera House, located in New South Wales, Australia. I've been there. My husband actually proposed to me on the steps of the Sydney Opera House, so it has some sentimental value to me too, that one. Really great soap. Here I'm doing Big Ben. There we go. And of course, this beautiful lady, who I know is going to polish up beautifully, the lovely Statue of Liberty. And last but of course not least is the Eiffel Tower, which I think this is probably the most detailed stamp. And this is the one I was worried about, but it came out amazingly. So I'm really happy. Okay, guys, that is it. Here they are, a beautiful set of Bon Voyage travel soaps. Make them, sell them as a set, give them to a friend who's going on holiday, use them in a hotel room. They are gorgeous. And don't forget the Las Vegas trio. If you're going to Vegas or you got friends going to Vegas, give them some Vegas soap. It's awesome. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you're enjoying the 2024 Stamped Soap Challenge. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you love what I do, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks. Enjoy.